A very warm welcome to everyone for your time for taking time to attend our webinar session, our NUS Med Zoom info session. And today the session is hosted by our Master of Science in Applied Biomedicine program. My name is Michael. I'm the course administrator for this program, MSc ABM for short. And with me, I have our program director, Associate Professor Tan Xiong Wei Kelvin, who will be giving a short presentation this evening on the curriculum and dealings of our ABM program. And then after the presentation, we'll also be having a short Q&A session where we'll answer your queries. Okay, now I shall hand the time over to Prof. Tan.
Thank you very much, Michael. Thanks to all the participants for attending this info session. It's really a pleasure to get to meet you on this platform. And as Program Director of MSc ABM, it's my pleasure and privilege to share our course with you. We have already had 2 runs and we're preparing for the 3rd run. And if you think that this course is applicable to you, useful for your careers, then do join us for the 3rd run of this master's course. So I'm going to just share my slides, if you don't mind. And I hope you can all see the cover slide for this. Just give me about 20 minutes to give you an overview of the course, and then we can open up the session for some sharing and some interactions. So I think it's good to start as to what is the motivation for this master's and how is it relevant to you in your careers and in the future. Would this be relevant for you in the years to come? And I think this was born out of a post-pandemic world. And it became very clear that advances in biomedicine has a part to play in addressing pandemics, solving the problems of pandemics. But if you look at how we address these pandemic issues, it actually applies to many other diseases as well. So what is the relevance of this field of applied biomedicine in a post-pandemic world? Well, first, we have to see what damage pandemics can cause to the world, not just in terms of health, survival, and death, mortality. But if you look here, when the pandemic was first announced, the stock market crashed for many countries. Right? There's a global economic crisis. And when the vaccine was announced in late 2020, the stock market rebounded, right? But even then, as we come out of the pandemic, you can see that there's so many economies were decimated. They were in negative territory for their economies during the pandemic, and many countries are still suffering in terms of jobs lost, lives lost, and health compromised. Now, if you look at numbers, they're also staggering. This is one of the worst pandemics in recent history. We have over 700 million cases and 7 million deaths. So we have really a big negative outcome from this pandemic. Now, when you have a problem, a biomedical issue, a disease, for example, how do you tackle any big disease, be it cancer or be it infectious disease and all that? Well, first you have to study its biology, how to manage the disease. You can study its transmission. You also need to understand treatment, right? And often treatment has to do with pharmacology or drugs. And then prevention, right? How do you prevent a disease? And vaccines, more notably mRNA vaccines, have become forefront knowledge on disease prevention. And this is actually the 3 pillars of our masters, right? Management of diseases, drug discovery and development, vaccines, and immunotherapy. So these 3 pillars are applicable to all diseases, right? So maybe some more than others, but still the basic understanding of these pillars are very important in biomedicine. But another reason why personally I wanted to create this masters, because I saw a world that is anti-science. It happened when Donald Trump was the president over 4 years ago, and it's happening to a greater degree now when Donald Trump is the current president of the USA. He is cutting away the education institutions. A lot of scientists have lost their jobs So this is bad, but not only you have strong men in these countries, you have the Brazil's president, Bolsonaro, who was anti-vaccine, he's an anti-vaxxer, for example, and this has impacted the lives of so many people. And I think one way to address this issue is to educate people on the merits of science and the power of applied biomedicine to solve the world's health problems. Okay, so this line I like is everyone is entitled to their own opinions, but no one is entitled to their own facts, right? Because facts are facts, and this is something that this applied biomedicine course is trying to convey to its participants, that we're going to teach you facts about biomedicine, and not just basic facts, but in how it applies to industries, to clinics, and to hospitals. So what can you do, or how do you upskill when you graduate from this course? Well, it can help you in academia if you're a poly lecturer, or if you're a teacher, or if you want to move on to PhD, this master's can help you. If you want to go into industry, you want to lead projects, or you're already in industry but you want to move up because you want to upskill with new knowledge, then industry is an area for you. If you are doing research in research institutes in Singapore or regionally, this is good for you. Or in some government agencies like Ministry of Education, Ministry of Health, this is a kind of upskilling degree that can even help you to do better in the next level of your career ladder. So just in Singapore, for example, these are various agencies that your masters would have some relevance for, like A*STAR, your Singapore Food Agency, Health Sciences Authority, Ministry of Health, NCID, and other government agencies. You can also look at companies that sell products that are in the medtech space or in the biomed space. You have Thermo Scientific, Boehringer Ingelheim, even Chinese companies like Mengniu, Research Instruments, and so on. So many opportunities for graduates of this masters. And of course, in Singapore, NUS is a very powerful research and academic institution. We are 8th in the world, first in Asia, based on the QS World Rankings. And School of Medicine, where you'll be partaking your understudying or studying your masters, is second in Asia. So we have a very strong academic community that's invested in your success, because they want to teach you and make sure you're ready for the outside world. So we have a track record, right, of this providing quality learning environments that will sort of equip you with broad-based knowledge within the field of biomedicine, but with a particular focus on applications. So theory is something you learn in your undergraduate days, but we want to show you real-world examples, how these technologies are applied in pandemics, in clinics and hospitals, and industries. Okay, so just to recap, if you don't already know, our master's programs are full-time for 1 year, part-time 2 years, and there are certain graduation requirements. So if you want to continue, you need to have a certain GPA. You also have this in your high schools and all that. So it's something that you're not unfamiliar with, right? And if you're working in Singapore and you want to do this part-time, you can stretch it to 2 years, right? And you can look at recordings, you can of course attend the assessment sessions, but you can spread out to 2 years and graduate with a master's in applied biomedicine. Okay. Of course, your final GPA should be a 3 out of 5 to graduate. So this is like a B minus, because we don't want you to leave with limited knowledge, right? You have to be proficient to some degree in order to be useful in your careers. Okay, the structure is quite unique. You can choose to specialize, or you can choose not to specialize. If you don't specialize, you can take whatever modules or courses you like, depending on your interest. But if you want to have a master's with a specialization, you can choose one of 3 tracks, right? You can choose vaccinology and immunotherapy. This is very popular, maybe because it's very relevant to this world in terms of infectious diseases prevention and cancer. We have infectious disease management, how to manage a pandemic, how to deal with outbreaks and so on, and drug discovery, how drugs applied to industry, how they're designed for cancer, how they're designed for infectious diseases and other diseases. Okay, so like most masters, there's a core component which are foundational knowledge, and then you have electives. Okay, and there's an option also to do a project if you feel that you want to explore hypothetical questions and go to a lab and pursue a capstone project. That's also possible. Okay, so you can choose, as I mentioned, you can choose 5 courses from the elective track, right? After choosing your core courses, you can choose electives, and in this track, you can specialize, right? For example, you do the vaccinology and immunotherapy, then you specialize in that domain, right? Or you can, as I mentioned, you can choose across any of the 3 tracks and then do not specialize, just come up with a master's in applied biomedicine. Okay, so these are the 4 core courses which we feel are very good to equip you to be leaders of biomedicine in the future, right? There's leadership course, advanced biostatistics, innovation. So if you want to start companies, how are companies formed and maintained and all that. And very attractive is this course called Advanced Biomedical Informatics that also has an AI component. So this is more to do with digital medicine, bioinformatics, the large data sets, how we manage large data, how we curate large data, and how we use AI to glean information from big data, for example. And these are the unrestricted electives. So you can have a capstone project, or if you don't want to do the capstone project, you can do these 2 courses, right, which are also quite foundational: signal transduction and biomedical research techniques. Okay, so it depends on your affinity. You like hands-on, or you want to do more courses, that's also possible. I'll just quickly go through the topics that we cover in the 3 tracks. For vaccinology and immunotherapy, they build up very nicely. There's one that is very clinical. The clinicians like to take this course called Clinical Immunology and Immunotherapeutics. But the rest are more biomedicine centric, right? So applied immunology, ABM 5101 is more foundational. And then we move on to applications such as vaccines and immunotherapy. Then there's advanced technologies in immune therapeutic development. And then we bring this all together in this crosstalk of microbiome, aging, and immunology. So a very nicely curated track. For the pharmacology track or the drug discovery track, it's a bit more applied in different sectors. So you have drugs used in infectious diseases, your antibiotics, antivirals, and so on. You have anti-cancer drugs. Then you have advanced topics in pharmacology and current topics in drug design and development. These have all industrial angles. They have people from a pharma coming to share their experiences, and also there are opportunities to go and visit site visits to see how these pharma companies run. Okay, and then lastly, there's current practices in biotechnology, which is also enterprise related, so to do with companies, spin-offs, and so on. For infectious disease management, it's also very applied. It's like, how do we deal with pandemics? How do we understand emerging diseases? So we start off with something more foundational, principles and research methods in infectious diseases. And then you can choose one of 3 very interesting courses that we collaborate with the public health school. Okay, you can do control of infectious diseases, outbreak management, or urban field epidemiology, or epidemiology in an urbanized setting like Singapore, right? And then there's vaccines, drugs, and then we come together with a unique offering called One World, One Health. So this is a very new concept born out of the pandemic, or made more relevant from the pandemic, where you have animals, the environment, and humans mingling. And when you mingle and the balance is not there, then outbreaks can happen. So how do we then understand how these have a role in disease outbreaks, and how do we then enhance our systems to prevent outbreaks and diseases from occurring because of the disbalance or imbalance of these 3 pillars? All right. So for a student, if you are full-time, let's say you're coming from another country like Indonesia, you're coming from Africa or the US, and you're spending time here, then try and do it within a year, because living expenses will accumulate if you stay for 2 years. Excuse me. So if you're full-time, in 1 year, you can split into 2 semesters. Okay, you can do 20 unit courses in the first semester, a mixture of core and electives, and do a capstone project. And then you can continue a capstone project in the second semester and work on 12 units. And then you also write up a short thesis or dissertation based on your capstone outcomes. Okay, for part-time, you just spread it out on across the 4 years, across the 4 semesters, and you can up to you to how much you want to front load or back load your courses. But this is a recommended spread. You do 12 for Sem 1, 12 for Sem 2, and 8 for Sem 3, and then Sem 4 you can sort of write up your dissertation, and throughout you have time to do your capstone. Okay, so that's more for your part-time people, the upskillers who are perhaps working in Singapore. Now, if you're not doing a capstone, you don't want to do a bench project, then it's just courses, right? You just spend your time doing courses. But I must say that for the immunology track, there's some bench exposure for some of the courses. So you actually do some small experiments in the immunology track, right? So that's why it's quite popular with the candidates, right? So part-time and full-time, it's just whether you condense the courses or you spread them out over 1 year, or you spread them over 2 years. So what will you get when you graduate? How better equipped will you be? I like to think of this as some kind of apprenticeship where you become a expert in something, right? Master's graduates will have acquired deep knowledge on technologies in biomedicine, advanced technologies, right? Not outdated technologies. And you can apply this to practice because we are teaching you applied biomedicine, how this applies to clinics, hospitals, industry, governments, and in the real world. Okay, but you will also understand how hypotheses are formulated and how to solve problems, right? Because this is taught consistently throughout the course. So I'm happy to say that this is one of the more successful programs. In our soft launch in early January 2024, we had 37 students, but in August that same year, we had 92 students. And in the third run, we're going to probably hit 100. So we're very excited to tell you that this course is well regarded. The feedback has been good. You can scan this QR code for more information. But we did the feedback with a small number of graduates who graduated from the January intake, and the feedback has been quite positive. So in terms of the quality of teaching, most said either good or excellent. Here, how about the support that you get from our staff and lecturers? Most said excellent or good. Okay. Importantly, did this course prepare you for your career? Most said either completely or somewhat. Okay. And are you satisfied with the support provided by NUS? Again, very satisfied. So majority, some were neutral. Okay. Would you recommend this course to others? Again, most said they would. One said no, maybe he had a bad experience. But as the numbers grow, I'm confident that this data will also be quite representative. Okay. So we interviewed some of our current graduates. So this is Julia Tang. I think she's a local, and she said that the MSc in Applied Biomedicine had equipped her with deep and up-to-date knowledge and gave her a better understanding of the technologies employed in the field of biomedicine. Okay. Yeah, so these are, we do a lot of engagement and interactions with the students. We play games when they first join. So these are the class of 2025. These are the students who will graduate in a few months' time. Right? It's a happy bunch. NUS is a very vibrant place. They work hard, they play hard, and we hope that their futures will be very bright upon graduation. Right? So our graduates already have found jobs. Some who are fresh grads from China, they have returned, they have found jobs in industries and research institutes. Some are converting to PhD, right? Some are pursuing internships in big companies, and some have started their own companies. So we have a very nice outcomes. I'm very happy because ultimately the master's is not just a degree, it is a step towards a better future for our graduates. So this is something that is kind of my KPI. I want to see more of this as a measure of the success of the program. Okay, so I'm one of the program directors. I'm supported by a colleague and good friend, Professor Zhang Yong Liang, who also teaches in the immunology track. Prof. Gautam from pharmacology department teaches the pharmacology track, and Dr. Peng Chin-wen teaches also the immunology track. Dr. Jeshri helps with the infectious disease track. Dr. Chris Sham helps with the capstone, and Dr. Petzel helps with the enterprise courses. Okay, and of course, Michael, you met him just now. He is a very capable manager. He helps me administer this course together with Michelle, who also does quite a lot of work managing the course, keeping the students up to date, and helping students get along with their courses. Right. So if you have any queries, please email our dedicated email, mscabm@nus.edu.sg, or email any of the program directors. We'll be happy to respond. Okay, so we hope that you join us on this exciting journey. We're into our third run. It has been very productive, very enjoyable journey, and do engage us if you have any other questions. Okay, thank you for your time, and I think we are open for Q&A.
Okay, there's a question by
Yep.
one participant saying that he saw that there are special terms in the website. Are the special terms required? Okay, so the special term currently is only there's only one course, which is the public health course being offered at special term. So if you are in the infectious diseases management track and you wish to take the course, then you'll be required to register for the special term. Otherwise, for the other tracks, there'll be no courses in the special term.
Yeah. So in
Okay.
special term, you can take a break and focus on your capstone project if you're working on a capstone project. Yeah.
Okay. And another question that I know that most part-timers always ask is that are the courses held online? And because we understand that the part-timers have work commitments, so they are not able to actually attend all the lessons regularly. Okay, so what I say is that for us, we are not particularly strict about attendance. Of course, we encourage everybody to attend lessons um, if they can. But all the lecturers, they do record their lectures and their lessons. Okay, and then we put it online for your own viewing on your own time. Okay, and some lectures do have a hybrid online and in-face, the hybrid format. So we try our best to help the part-timers. But of course, we have to say that still we encourage students to actually attend lessons in person because the interaction between the lecturer and you are better, is much better than over online. Okay. So and then there are some things like for the immunology, the lab sessions, they actually can't do it online. You have to be there to actually experience it. So we do of course, like I say, we are not so particular about attendance, but we do encourage students to actually um be there in person if you can.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Okay.
we have some part-timers, some local part-timers who actually have a arrangement with their bosses, with employers, to give them some flexibility to either when they work from home, they can actually come to class, so they don't have to be in office all the time. So if you have such opportunities to have a talk with your employer, please do that. If there are lunchtime lectures, then you can take a lunch break and come attend the lectures. But importantly, during your assessments, it's good that you're around, right, for your continual assessments and your exams. So it is possible. As Michael said, we're not so strict on the attendance, but try to get as much exposure to the community as possible.
Okay. I saw a question on the rebate. So, okay, the rebate, the 40% rebate and 20% rebate for alumni and 40% rebate for Singaporeans and PRs, permanent residents, they are automatic. So you don't have to apply for it. So once you come into, how it works is that once you come into the program, we will actually, how to say, in the back end, the Office of Finance will actually check your background and then automatically it will be applied to your fees once you have
Mhm.
successfully enrolled in the program, lah. So you don't have to worry about it. Okay, and as for the capstone project, are they research based? Prof Tan, will you be able to answer?
So they're mostly bench-based, but some of them are increasingly dry lab. So they can now do things like meta-analysis, bioinformatics work, and so on. So again, it depends on the lab that's offering the project. So at the start of semester, we will give you a list of projects that are available. Some are bioinformatics related, some are like vaccine related, some involve mouse work, some are microbiome related. So it depends, and you can choose, right? But increasingly, because of shortage of space and all that, there are a lot of dry lab projects being offered. So it's good if you want to learn about hypothesis-driven things. Capstone projects are actually quite good. I have one in my lab, and he's a part-time student, but very good. He's doing very well, and the results are quite interesting. A lot of Singaporeans in this call, so take advantage of that 40% rebate because it won't last forever. It's only temporary, right? So while it's still on, I think do take it, because the NUS is trying to help upskill Singaporeans.
Okay, I saw another question that about the capstone. How do you, okay, this is a good question. How do you get to know your mentors and research interests? So, what happens for the capstone select, how you choose the capstone, the process is that before you enroll in the program, probably in around July, we will publish the most updated list of projects and the supervisors or on our website, and we'll probably send it to all the selected applicants as well. So you will um, take a look at the list of projects and write personally to the PIs or the supervisors that you are interested in. You can actually write to more than one because most people do not actually may have different interests. And one thing that we want to state is that the project need not be tied to your specialization track because that's what most people think. Like if I choose immunology, I'll take a project on immunology and vaccinology, but that's not really true. It depends on what's your interest and how also that when you approach the PI and then how your interests align. So basically, after you have spoken to the PI, like maybe through email, through Zoom, and then both of you have confirmed that you are mutually consent that you will take each other as your supervisor and the mentee, then we will send you a form that you have to fill up and endorsed by the PI, and then this is officially confirmed that you'll be doing his capstone project, and then you can start it off. So basically, we need the deadline normally will allow you more time because some people may need more time to get to know a supervisor. So probably even after you start the program, probably around end August or even September, we will still allow you to change your supervisor if necessary. Or even that if you intend to actually drop and then take the two um, elective courses, we also go on a case by case basis. But rightfully, because it's applied biomedicine, so we highly encourage students to take on the capstone project. Yeah, because it's also the PIs giving time and taking time effort to offer you the projects. So yeah, there's a question on whether you can take the degree over 3 semesters. Okay, so like we mentioned earlier, the candidature for full time is 1 year, which is 2 semesters, and for part time is 4 semesters. But the maximum candidature you can go for full time is 2 years, and for part timers is 3 years. So theoretically, yes, but we hopefully, I mean, we try to take a very flexible approach on this, but normally if you can finish it within a year, it'll be better. But we go on a case by case basis. If you have a good reason why you need more time or you decide to take an internship in between and all that, then it's possible that we can extend we not extend actually, but you can extend to 3 semesters or more. Yeah.
So just to build on Michael's point, because
Mm.
when we fashion the modules, they're building up in complexity. So if you take in two semesters, then actually it's aligned quite nicely. If you spread out in 3 semesters, then you're going to see the same modules again in the third semester, unless you do the non specialized course where you mix and match. So I think have a conversation with us. I think we can help you to map out your courses so that if you take 3 semesters, it's comfortable for you, but you also get to be trained in the domain that you are interested in.
Somebody did ask how frequent the classes will be and the timings. So actually, you can refer to our website. There is we currently, for the current schedule that we have, most probably likely the schedules will not change by much for the new intake. And also one thing we have to state is that part-timers and full-timers, full-time students they share the same timetable. There's no separate timetable for the part-timers, unfortunately. Actually, most of the lecturers are also teaching in other courses and other programs. So for them, it's actually hard to actually split the part-time and full-time students to have. That's why we have recordings. So in the end, if let's say that the part-timers, due to their work commitments, they are not really able to attend the lessons, so then you have to watch the recordings and you can actually email the lecturers or have a Zoom session over them if you have any questions. They're always open to part-timers, and having any answering their questions and all that. Another thing about the rebates is that the 40% and 20% rebates are not stackable. Okay, then there's another question about the transition to PhD. Actually, this is a good question. So we do have students who wish to pursue PhD after finishing our MSc ABM, but unfortunately, we do not have a true train program at the moment. So basically, you have to complete the MSc program first, and then you apply for a PhD program. Of course, it'll be best if you can apply to the PhD program in our NUS Medicine School of Medicine, because Prof. Kevin Tan is the vice dean as well of graduate studies. So we will be happy to see our students actually continue their PhD studies in our school. But if you actually apply to other universities outside or maybe other faculties, that's fine too. And as for credit transfer of course units, normally for NUS we do offer, but it depends on individual school how much they wish to waive or transfer your credits. Yeah, but for us, for our NUS medicine, we can actually um, transfer your credits up to 100%. But that is still to be decided, because we still have our first intake to be graduated. I mean, to apply for our PhD program first before we decide which courses are actually transferable.
For those of you interested in
Mm.
a PhD, maybe you can do a capstone project in a lab of that you have a good synergy with, and maybe your supervisor might encourage you to stay on to do a PhD in his lab because you did well for the capstone project. So that's one idea, one sort of strategy that you can adopt.
And one more question is do our programs offer fall intake? Fall, I assume January. So only because of the first intake we did offer in January 2024. That is a special case. But moving onwards now, we only offer one intake per year, which is in August. The reason being that, like Prof. Tan has mentioned, the curriculum, the alignment of the semester 1 and semester 2 courses, they are in complexity, right? So we believe that it's better for the students to start in August and then go on to the semester 2 in January, than to actually start in January. That's why we are not offering January intake anymore.
Mhm.
Yeah. Somebody asked about the tuition fees. I'll say that for this August 2025 intake, it's about 57K in Singapore dollars. Okay, Prof, I think this question you can answer.
Okay. For the
For the capstone, yeah.
capstone, it's not mandatory to publish. If you can, that would be good, especially if you're doing a two-year masters where you can spread your capstone project over 4 semesters, and you can build up the data for good publication. What's happening in NUS now is that the professors are not supposed to publish in low impact journals. We're all mandated to publish in top journals. So your capstone project can be published, but it's like a low impact kind of work, then it may not be published. But if your work is good and it goes to a higher journal, then you can publish. But it's not a requirement for a program masters for publication. If you can, it'll be good.
Okay, for the admission requirement, bachelor's degrees, we accept honors is optional, but of course it'll be advantageous to have an honors degree lah. But we do accept quite a few suitable applicants without the honors degree in our first two intakes. We also look at how your personal statement, maybe your research interests and other background.
Yeah. I think
Okay.
what's important for
Mm,
application is the grades that you got during your undergraduate days,
mm.
your job experience. Have you worked? Any awards? Have you got any academic awards? And maybe which university you're from. So we look holistically at your application, not just whether you have honors or no honors.
Okay, there's one more question. Are there exams? Yes, of course there are exams, but not every course. Okay, so the assessment for each course is probably different based on the course coordinator. So some of them prefer presentations, assignments, while others prefer quizzes, exams. But definitely you will encounter courses with exams. At least I can say for the core courses, there will be exams. But naturally, it's just to assess you lah. So basically, in the first lecture, the course coordinator will inform you and brief you on what are the forms of assessment lah, so that you will know in beforehand. Just now earlier in concurrent with what earlier said about attendance being we're not so strict about it, but for assessments like exams, presentations, and quizzes that need to be present in person, then you have to be in person. This one, normally we do not do it over Zoom. Even for the software exams like online one, you have to be in person. This is part of our policy. Yeah.
Yeah, ultimately, we want to make sure that you're equipped for your jobs in the future, right? So it's going to be quite rigorous. We're going to make sure that you are, an expert in this domain when you graduate, so that you really do well in your career.
I just will bring up maybe one more frequently uh asked question. Okay, this about the specialization. Normally people ask, can I change my specialization halfway? So basically the specialization is based on the courses that you choose. Okay, so but in the beginning when you register in the first semester, you'll be asked to choose a specialization, and in the second semester you'll be requested to choose a specialization again in case you wish to change. How it works is that you take the courses. Of course, if you hit 40 units and then um all the courses that you take are under the specialization requirement, then you'll graduate the specialization. Otherwise, if you hit 40 units and you do not fulfill the so-called specialization track, any specialization track requirement, you can still graduate, but without specialization. So another thing we wish to highlight is that the specialization will appear on your transcript, but not on your degree certificate. So basically, everybody who graduates will get the degree certificate, the Master of Science in Applied Biomedicine, but uh, yeah, there won't be a specialization printed on the degree certificate to clarify. So basically, only the transcript. Yes. So there are people who actually, in the end, they choose the specialization, but they turn out that they did not want, they just want to graduate without specialization. That's fine with us. There's no hard and fast rule on this. Yeah. Somebody asked, how many students are we recruiting for August 25? So as Prof. Tan mentioned, we are hoping for 100. But of course, it doesn't mean that once the quota is met, we'll reject the rest. It's actually based on suitability and what. So if as long as you are suitable, then we'll offer you. There's another question about student completing master's degree in Singapore. How feasible is it to find a job? Okay, so regarding the job seeking process, okay, we have a Center for Future Ready Graduates. Okay, they will actually give a briefing during the orientation day on the orientation itself. So you can approach them. Normally, they'll send many of the so-called vacancies, positions available in the industries and also in the research institutes to our students who are graduating and also who are looking for positions in Singapore. Of course, we can't guarantee that because this is a competitive job market, we can't guarantee that uh, there'll be a that everybody who graduates with our masters will just walk into any interview and get a job. So it depends on how well you do in doing the interview and all that also lah. But this the center, the CFG, will help you um prepare. It's okay, help you prepare for the interview and all that. When you graduate, we'll still keep in touch. Try to keep in touch with our alumni, and then if you actually require like any of our professors or to give you a reference, then we'll be also happy to do it. Yeah. There's some questions that the maximum and minimum workload. Okay, so basically, if you can take around 3 to 4 modules in a semester, that'll be quite good. Because if you're taking capstone, you have even more text. But if you are just doing purely coursework, maybe you can take more. That's up to you. We do not really restrict, but minimum, there's minimum you have to take at least 1 or 2 courses per semester. That's the minimum for full-time. Part-timers, minimum one course. We won't have any restrictions on the maximum number of modules you can take. But just pace yourself well lah. Yeah, because the courses are not that easy actually, but not too difficult, but it is quite intensive too.
One question on research experience outside of
Course.
this. Maybe I can answer that, Michael. So I think the capstone is therefore ideal for you, right? Because if you don't take the capstone, then you have to take more courses. You won't have much time for research. So if you want to have research experience, then if you're, let's say you're local and you want to do 2 years as a part-timer, then you can stretch your project over 2 years. If you're doing full-time, then you work intently on your project for 1 year, and that is your research experience, and you can get credits for it as well, and maybe even a publication, right? So don't do it outside your course because there's no time, right? Because research in itself is very intensive. So do it within the course as a capstone. Choose a good lab, a nice project, maybe an applied project, something that gives you potential for a PhD after you graduate. That's my advice. One last question. Just came in.
Okay.
You can
Yeah,
apply.
yes, you can.
You can apply before you graduate, and then we might give you a provisional acceptance and say upon graduation. We have to look at your standing in the course. But of course, you can apply before you graduate. Like as you're moving towards graduation, you can apply for a program, right?
Yeah, based on my knowledge, we have now at least I think about 3 of our current or graduating MSc ABM students who are actually applied to our PhD, our NUS Medicine PhD. Since there are no more questions, then I'm happy to say that we have come to the end of our today's info session. Okay, and we are very grateful and then thankful to everybody for taking your time to come and attend our session. I can see some of the names I can see because I do the applications. I can see some of the people who have accepted our offers are in the a part of the attendees, and it's very nice to have you here. So please feel free to contact us if you have any more questions. This is not the end of I mean the info session may have ended, but we are always open anytime to any answering your queries or your questions. Just give us a call, email. We can also hold a short Zoom with you if you have any questions to ask also. Okay, so thank you everybody again for attending the session, and thank you Prof Tan for being here to give us a presentation and also to answer the questions. Okay, so we look forward to having those people who are successful and we have offered them. We look forward to having you in the program, and to those who are still considering, just let us feel free to approach us anytime. Okay, our application is still open until 30th April, so you still have a chance. It's still not too late.
Thank
Okay,
you,
thank you
everyone.
everyone.
Very enjoyable session. Have a
Yeah,
nice evening.
thank you everyone.
Okay, bye.